Hello everyone, good evening. Thank you so much for coming to this new edition of 2020 Visions. My name is Neiza. I'm the co-founder of Ochodias, and as always, I'm going to be your host tonight. We've created this space, this new digital space, for interviews with a purpose to know and share the visions about the future that creatives have in the world. And by creatives, I mean all kinds of creatives and creativity. We know that we're living really hard and uncertain times right now. So we think that in order to have clarity in our way of seeing the world tomorrow, talking and sharing experiences, points of view and thoughts with others is super important. And will help us move away from our comfort zones and expand our perspectives. So before we start, as always, I'd like you to remind you that we're going to do the Q&A via Slido. So just go to slide.do, enter this code in the homepage 56841. The cool thing about Slido is that not only you can make your question like anonymously, but also you can vote for your favorite question. And so in that way, we can answer them accordingly to the according to the number of votes it has. So without any further ado, let's welcome our guest of today, Mr. Pavel Reppo. Pavel is passionate about fostering opportunities for sustainable positive change. He's a proud founder and previous CEO of the Wayfaring Band, an organization that creates travel opportunities for adults experiencing intellectual disabilities, and leadership fellows, facilitating an inclusive culture built on the principle of mutual aid. Pavel is a native of Belarus and an avid traveler who has worked directly with orphan youth and children living in slums in Uganda. His current labor of love is Finemind, an initiative that supports community mental health through peer-to-peer support system that recruits, trains, and empowers community members, including clinical and non-clinical, to provide people with what they need to recover from common mental health disorders. Finemind is currently working in post-conflict Agago district, northern Uganda. When not working to affect change, Pavel likes to both make and eat omelets. I mean, with that amazing introduction, I mean, you have to end it with that you both make and eat omelets. I mean, I think that's a great question to make in the Q&A. Like, how much, like, how many omelets do you eat? What is the term of the egg you like? Like, you know, I love omelets too, by the way. Pavel, thank you so much for joining us today, for your time. Anything you want to add before we start?
This is such an honor, Neiza. Thank you for setting all this up. Thank you for the collaboration and the team behind this incredible image and the orchestration of this video. It's just a true delight. And it's been a while since we've actually spoken, so I'm eager to catch up with you and to see you on camera.
Totally. I mean, I want to, I know this is an interview for you because I want to know a lot of things about you and your perspectives and your vision about things, but feel free to ask me anything you want to know and make it more like a very easygoing conversation.
Absolutely.
So let's warm up a little bit the conversation and talk a little about you. I know that I did this small introduction of you. What do you do? What are your passions? But I would like you to talk a bit more about you, your journey, and your personal interests. So, like the first question, what do you do, and how do you get started?
Totally, absolutely. I run an organization called Finemind, and if I take us back, at this point, close to 20 years, I think the catalyst to the inception, to the birth of this organization was my experience, was my struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. So obsessive compulsive disorder is typically broken up into two kind of basic building blocks. You have obsessions, which are these apprehensive thoughts that make you feel danger, fear, scared. And in order to relieve yourself of this obsession, you engage in a compulsion, in a behavior to rid yourself of that. And it's not prescribed. You as the individual kind of create your own escape route, if you will, your own behavior. And I've had obsessive compulsive disorder since I was 13. At least that's my first memory of it. I remember standing distinctly in the bathroom, and I was washing my hands, looking at myself in the mirror, and I couldn't stop washing my hands. And I would wash them for 30, 40 minutes. And this would happen multiple times a day, weeks at a time, because in my head, despite me lathering them with soap, they were not clean. And I was longing, craving to kind of check off in my head this just right feeling. And when it would come, I would leave and continue on with my day, but my hands would crack and bleed. And despite the pain, I would continue to wash my hands. OCD has stuck with me for, again, most of my life. It's evolved. As much as I think I'm always ahead of it, OCD is very clever, far more charismatic than I will ever be, and it continues to outpace me. It's a couple of steps ahead of me. But I've been very fortunate and grateful to live in the United States. In the United States, there's a lot of support, therapy, treatments, literature, you name it. I've done kind of the gamut of all services that you can really kind of dabble in. And I often say that the only silver lining to me having OCD is the fact that I live in the United States. Because if you look at the world abroad at large, it's not as fortunate. Across the world, 500 million people currently live with mental illness, of which 300 million people are experiencing depression. Now I actually think both of these numbers are conservative. They're low, because most countries, most places, Uganda in particular, where we operate, they don't have screening questionnaires. There's no way to detect or to know if someone is actually experiencing depression, anxiety, so forth and so on. And if we root into Uganda, it's a country that's stunning. It's beautiful. It's actually known as the Pearl of Africa for its flora and its fauna. And yet there are 30 psychiatrists for the whole country of 43 million people. And it's a shocking number, but they're not alone. Liberia, for instance, they have one psychiatrist for the whole country. Ethiopia has about 40. And in a place like that, for them to replicate or to mimic what the United States does, or more high-income countries, is just foolish. It's silly. So they need to level up, to empower lay people, local individuals, community members who can be trained in an intensive, given a skill set, kind of a tool belt, if you will, to provide these basic services to the community. And Finemind, that's inherently what we do. We identify local community members who have a zeal and enthusiasm, a passion, want to help, and we give them basic tools. And in that training, they're playing and practicing and making mistakes and trying to understand, how do you effectively build rapport with someone who is maybe scared, or who knows that the stigma is very overwhelming. And after we feel content in their preparation, they're in the field, they're in the health centers and primary care, actively providing care for individuals who experience depression and anxiety. And we currently work in northern Uganda, so right on the border of South Sudan.
So it's kind of, well, obviously it's not funny to have OCD, but you were having kind of like a COVID situation at the age of 13, like washing your hands, like
I've never thought about it like that. Yeah.
I'm really curious about why Uganda, like in the first place. What drove you there? Like, very far away from the US, very far from home, this place is like, you don't know anything about this place. So I really want to know why why you choose Uganda to start the project. What got your attention in the first place, or how was the journey that drove you there?
Of course, of course. I'd been to Uganda 3 times prior to me kind of taking this plunge, this leap into starting Finemind. The very first time I went, I was, I believe, a junior in college. So incredibly naive, ambitious beyond my belief, and hell-bent, dead set that I, Pavel Reppo, would change the world. And I was going to start in Africa. And I had a good friend who had another friend, and they had an organization. It was called the Uganda Project. And they would go to Uganda annually to support about a dozen young adults who were orphaned by AIDS. And having this naivete and this aspiration to change the world, I had to go. There was no question about that. So I asked and got connected to her friends and did end up going. I stayed for maybe 12 days that particular trip. And I did not end up changing the face of Africa. I actually came home and was very jaded and a bit sullen. And what I realized what had changed was me. And I realized that if I am ever to have any sort of impact, I need to keep coming back. I need to keep building rapport, building those communities, building those friendships. So I made a pledge, a vow to myself that I was going to come back and to see these individuals I was with, as opposed to fetishizing, me holding an African baby and posting that on social media. That's not the true culture or the true nature of Uganda, nor did I want to exemplify that. So I started to build friends and community, and kind of my earlier comment that the status of mental health in Uganda, I think the crossroads of me being there and the situation they're in felt like an appropriate place to kind of plant my feet. I actually toyed around with the idea of going to India, but India actually has a lot of incredible innovation happening in the mental health space. And I took a risk, a plunge into Uganda.
And since then, I mean, since your first travel, and then it was kind of like back and forth, like traveling back and forth, US, Uganda?
Absolutely. So I have now been to Uganda seven times. No, just in total. So
Oh.
not this year. No. This last time I went was in September of last year. But prior to that, maybe the 2 years prior, I would split my time living in the United States and living in Uganda. And at that point, our work had gotten some momentum and some traction, and it was critical for me to make a presence, to continue interacting with the relevant stakeholders and the decision makers, as opposed to leaving. And I wanted to continue to learn about Uganda. Now, as long as I live, Neiza, I will never be Ugandan. I will never know the culture. And it's really important as a white male coming into Uganda that has such imperial, feel. I mean, like, it's pretty much still palpable in the country. I have to work to not let that colonial framework impact the people. And it took a long time to even get to a place where I was seen as an equal, as opposed to someone who deserves or requires respect. And at some point, I actually had to step away because people were still looking at me in a way that I think made this balance kind of off kilter. And that's when I came home and I let the team kind of take charge and take the reins.
I wanted to talk about, like, I mean, I was also curious about that. Like, how was your process being with the locals and to got their confidence, and so they can also open up about a lot of the things that they were going through, and not seeing you as this white male, foreign, privilege that comes to my country to tell me what to do, like, what was that first impression, and what was your process to gain that confidence from the locals?
When I got to Uganda, I identified one health center A health center is maybe a small form way of saying a hospital. This particular health center sees about 100,000 patients annually. Very small infrastructure, but they do incredible work. And I was very conscious that I didn't want to come in kind of guns blazing, that I knew what I'm doing. So for the first couple of months, I actually volunteered. Anything that they needed to be done, whether it was intakes of patients, providing patients' blood results, or sitting in the HIV/AIDS corner of the kind of complex and taking patients, and whatever needed to be done, I just showed up and I didn't press my agenda. I wanted to truly learn, to see the flow, to build those connections, build that friendship, and be a part of the mechanism that they were building, because I'm a guest. And at some point, I think it became, it came to a place where I could, to a point, interject. And I did see value in providing mental health supports. And when I kind of echoed that notion, I was met with a positive response, as opposed to me coming in immediately and projecting that I know best. I really tried to be intentional about learning, listening, and only with that, taking any sort of action.
Yeah, I mean, like, humility is also like is a great way to start everything. Like,
Absolutely.
and taking a little bit of that, I think that you had to use a lot of creativity in your way. Like, how do I get, uh, how do I get to do what I want in this place with this kind of people, with in this community, or with the different stakeholders that I want to these people to jump in the project that I have, or maybe, I don't know, an idea. And well, right now, I mean, during this strange times, a lot of people have felt blue, have felt bad, obviously. We've seen like episodes of depression. We've seen also like a lot of messages of it's okay not to be okay. And especially in my industry and my circle of friends and colleagues, there's a lot of like blank minds during the situation, and they don't know how to cope with this. And like trying to link it with your journey in Uganda, and what you had to do to gain that confidence and to actually do what you really want to do and start this project. I want to know, how do you feel about your own creativity right now? And how do you apply it not only in Finemind, but also in kind of like in your day-to-day basis?
I've actually thought a lot about this, and I think I am far too critical of my creativity. Now, what do I mean by that? Whenever I create something, or I have a kind of a lightning bolt of excitement, a jolt to do something, I dive in, I'll do it, and whatever I yields from that kind of endeavor, that practice, the creation, in my eyes, it has to be polished, it has to be perfect, it has to be complete. And not only that, I think the real kicker here is that it has to change the world. And holding myself to such a high bar is a recipe for disaster. Because inherently, if you look at those 4 criteria, polished, perfect, complete, and world changing, there's really not that many ideas or creations that actually kind of equal that. And insofar, I think I have a lot of judgment with my creative process. And often I think that actually inhibits my creativity, because I conflate my self-worth to what I'm creating. And if it is not changing the world, then I am not deserving or worthy, or I'm not a good person. So I'd love to have a much friendlier, a better relationship with creativity, to be far less judgmental, and to actually be more accepting of the process, as opposed to kind of gaining acceptance on the actual creation, how can I find joy and understanding and learning in the process of creation? And this is something I think I'm quite a novice at, because I want to, I want to jump to the end. I think one of my superpowers is vision. I think I dream quite big, and I often want the world to be what my mind conceives. So I'll leap over the actual process of creation to the end result. And I want to really be much more intentional about having pride in that process, and not necessarily conflating my self-worth if the product, if the yield isn't incredible.
And how do you, like, as you said that you have a lot of ambition, when you are in a situation where you think like, wow, this is such a great idea, but you don't have like the resources to apply it, how do you deal with that? If you tried as much as possible to apply it, or if you just like drop it off and just move on with another idea or another ambition that you have.
Totally. And maybe I'll give an example of how Finemind came to be. It was in a very similar way. I had a moment of feeling struck by this idea of, my God, the global mental health landscape, there's so little being done. There's so many countries who are quite comparable and similar to Uganda. Why isn't this more mainstream? So I sat at the computer and I did some basic research, looking into the numbers, looking into possible solutions. And I stumbled upon a man, his name is Vikram Patel. Now, Vikram Patel in 2015, he was voted one of the 100 most influential people by Time magazine for his express work in global mental health. He's in many ways kind of the founding father to the approach that Finemind borrows, this idea that you can reallocate the few specialists who are on ground, and you can empower and level up a lesser qualified worker. And in that moment, me being completely naive, but just jolted with excitement, I thought of what is one action I can do. And mind you, I've already done some actions, right? I went on Google, I Googled, I did some research, but I decided to email him. This person who seemingly is kind of untouchable, right? Voted one of the most incredible change makers in that particular year. So I emailed him. I introduced myself. I was very honest and candid. Hello, this is me. I love the work that you're doing. I experience OCD. I'd love to jump on a call with you. And to my surprise, Neiza, in 2 hours, this gentleman wrote me back. And back and forth, we did end up actually Skyping. We had a call. And in hindsight, I don't know how much tactical or practical knowledge he gave me, but he definitely kind of fanned my flame a little bit. I felt that much more excited that this person wrote me back, that he entertained me. And he, in the midst of our exchange, told me about this course that was happening in India, where people like me could go and learn from this motley crew of people about methods and interventions to scale up mental health systems and solutions in low income settings. And at that point, I made a decision to raise the funds and to go to India. And I remember, I mean, clearly when I arrived, he was there and he was shocked. He's like, Pavel, I'm so surprised to see you. and I said, well, I'm just over the moon and excited to be here, and I can't wait to learn and to apply the knowledge I've gotten here. So I'll quickly summarize that. I think it's really important when you have such an idea to kind of what is the next best thing you can do, as opposed to trying to think, oh, how do I get there? I mean, what is the immediate next best thing you can do? And I think in my eyes, it was to email this individual, and then that jump started this remarkable journey. Like, I would have never planned as well, as it did go. So, yeah.
Wow, like I felt that like several times, that I have someone that I admire a lot, and then I just jump in, and then I say, well, let's text this person. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, having no reply. Like, okay,
sure.
at least I tried. um, how do you felt? How did you feel? Sorry, how do you feel like having this person like that you admired a lot, like
Mm,
in front of you, uh,
mm,
and being like arm to arm with this person and being able to have all the resources and all the materials this person can like uh, share with you so that you can start this project, because I guess that with Bikram was a starting point
mm.
of Finemind, and the model that you guys applied in Finemind. How was that?
Absolutely. I, you know, I truly believe that I was standing on the shoulders of giants in that moment. You hear that a lot, but I was in a group where I felt uncomfortable. I didn't necessarily belong. I wasn't a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I wasn't a mental health provider. I was someone who had a keen passion and enthusiasm. And when we went around, there was about 50 of us in this room, and people were introducing themselves. You know, hello, my name is Kenneth, and I am from South Sudan, and I run this extraordinary organization that provides trauma support. Hello, I am a psychiatrist from this and this, and it reaches me. And I say, hello, my name is Pavel, and I'm excited to be here. But I also remember saying that a lot of people, they also asked, what is your goal? What are you trying to obtain or leave with? And a lot of people were saying connections or to learn. And I thought that that was a given. Of course I was going to learn. Of course I was going to make connections. But I remember thinking to myself that I want something else. And I said, again, kind of to my own internal dialogue, I'm going to use this knowledge here to create something, to do something. Which maybe in hindsight was a very pressurized expectation. And I'm grateful that I was able to live up to it. But in the moment, to know that I have spent this money, that I'm spending 2 weeks in this far off country away from everything, and I need to create something, or it's not a success. It was a lot of pressure. But being amongst these individuals who are truly masters of their craft, I mean, I was just glossed over. I was learning, I was absorbing, I was a sponge. And one of the models that they talked about, it was called the Manaus Model, which was actually implemented in India about a decade ago at this point. And our spine, the work that Finemind provides, is an adaptation of this model. We took it and we have adapted it to the context of Uganda, but this idea of offering a collaborative and step care approach. Collaborative in the idea that because there are so few specialists, it's imperative that you work with doctors, with specialists to unite around the patient. And these steps to care, I'm a pretty staunch believer that healthcare, mental health care, it's not a one size fits all. If someone needs something else, you better believe that we're going to provide this other alternative. So to me, it was a no-brainer. And at that point, we tried it on, and I started picking their brains and emailing them relentlessly and probably bugging them and annoying them. And that was the foundation to Finemind.
And it's crazy because I mean, trying to put myself in your shoes, like being aware that you're not a psychologist, you're not a psychiatrist, you don't have any like like education in those kind of uh, like careers.
Mm-hmm.
Being seated with all of these people that are very like specialists in what they do.
Of course.
I guess that there were a lot of people that told you like, why are you doing this? You're not going to be able to do this because you don't understand. You're not a psychologist. You're not a psychiatrist. How can you like understand what the people's needs, or how can you help them, or all of this walls and barriers that people and a lot of Yeah, a lot of people say to you that, no, you can't do that, you can't do this. I mean, it's impossible. You can. I mean, Uganda, are you crazy? I mean, you're dreaming. Uh, I want to know what are like the biggest challenges of your work, and what were those first challenges that you had when you were starting?
That's too many to count, right? Too many challenges to count. Uh, I'll maybe kind of break it up into two categories: more of the kind of on the ground challenges, and maybe more internal challenges. I born in Belarus, like you mentioned, but I've grown up here in the United States in Colorado, and I've spent most of my life entrenched in an entrepreneurial community. Individuals like you, like all the other folks that you've interviewed prior to me, and the folks that you're going to be interviewing ahead of me, individuals who really believe in community, in creation, in love, and look at the nexus of all of those things to have a really impactful jolt in life and history. And I think I was a little subdued to this idea that the rest of the world operates in that same way. So when we hired our initial three lay workers, our three health workers who kind of took a large risk, who were courageous to leap in with our work, I led with my baggage of assuming that they were also equally as responsive as I was. They were equally as driven. They had as vast as aspirations of me, and that because this organization was my dream, that they were going to revel in this dream as well. And boy, was I wrong. It was a pretty startling realization that, yes, this is a labor of love for me, but for other individuals, it's a job. And it's not a bad thing that for them it's a job, but it's something that I need to be aware of, because if I hold them to the expectation that it's a dream and they're going to work relentlessly like I am, I'm going to be consistently let down. And I was. I mean, over and over and over again.
You were. I mean, why do you exist? I mean,
I also think because I generally, I think I'm a pretty understanding person, and I probably want to be more liked than respected. I think I've come to know that about myself. But in places where you lead a team, sometimes it's required to keep those individuals accountable. And that's not something A, I was good at, B, nor did I want to get good at. And I think in moments like that, they started to take advantage of me. My team, not necessarily even consciously or with malintent, but I remember them sitting me down, especially my project manager initially, and she said, Pavel, we are taking advantage of you. We are kind of manipulating your graciousness. You need to be much more firm with us. And when we ask you particular things, you can't kind of let us go. And Neiza, I remember that moment. It was like an existential crisis. I was trying to be really much in line with my heart and what I've come to know and my learning, and it wasn't working. And I was told point blank that we are taking advantage of your graciousness, of my heart. I mean, I was distraught and wrecked. And multiple calls back home to my partner, to other individuals, mentors, to try and really piece together what I do. And still not an expert at that, but I'm definitely leaning more in to being more firm, more direct, and maybe not as gracious as I can, because sometimes graciousness doesn't actually yield the benefit that you need. I'll comment on one more challenge. To start something that is this speckle, this seed that you plant and you constantly water it. I can work tirelessly. I mean, you can put me in a seat and I will be glued to the bottom of that seat for hours.
Glue.
I will.
I love that.
I absolutely will. But at some point, it certainly takes a bit of luck, and it also takes funds. It takes money. As much as your idea can be the best idea in the world, if your idea isn't executed well, the multiplier effect of that idea is zero. You can have a poor idea, but if you can execute that idea, your execution of the idea will be better than my grandiose, incredible idea. And often, I think the nourishment is funding. I'm not saying always, but to have some of it is critical. And I think sustainability, for the sake of our mission, for the sake of our vision, but also for my sanity. How do I live? And I've been fortunate to be surrounded by a partner and family and friends who believe in the work and who have stood by me, because it's not bringing in the money to sustain a livelihood, but I'm always hopeful. So those are the two big challenges.
And there's a lot of omelets to eat, right? So,
yeah.
well, moving on to other like more bright questions, because we have a lot of questions to answer, and too little time. I would like to go to the next one and talk about more brighter things. And we talked about challenges. We talked about like how do you feel about your own creativity. I want to know, and obviously your passion about like omelets and eggs and travel and everything, but I really want to know, what are the things that you're most passionate about? I mean, or maybe there's some new things that you realize in this time. I mean, in this strange times that you were like drive to it, or I lost my passion in one thing and now I have another new passion, you know, like.
Absolutely. I'll give the obvious one, but I won't spend too much time on this one. Access to mental health. Absolutely passionate about that, crazy about it. Therapy, I've been in therapy for about 5 or 6 years at this point. It has changed, it's saved my life. And as a male, growing up in very much kind of a male-dominated society. I was born in Belarus, Eastern European. It's frowned upon to go to therapy, to seek support or solace from another individual. I know you can relate to that. I think actually, you know, Mexico and the culture is very synonymous and similar to Eastern European. But I have reaped such incredible benefit from it because I have access to it. And in places like Uganda and places all over the world, most people don't. Another thing I'm most passionate about is and I don't know if it's a passion per se, but where I've kind of seen my attention lately is kindness to others, but maybe more at the forefront to oneself. And kindness to oneself, this idea of, especially us being in quarantine right now, we have a lot of time on our hands, probably more than we want. We're not able to busy or occupy ourselves, so our thoughts are a little bit more rampant. And I've seen myself really commit to learning how we can be better friends to ourselves. How can we be kinder to our thoughts, to our concerns, to our doubts? How do you develop this rapport where you're not necessarily grabbing onto something to distract yourself because you're restless, because you have something that's on the top of your head that's causing you to feel unnerved? And feelings like that, we immediately want to push away because we don't like the discomfort they cause. But I'm really trying to sit with that and understand, why am I experiencing that? Why can't I sit in silence for a few minutes without having to reach for my phone or to read or to have to call someone? I think the power of sitting with our thoughts and refraining from engaging in an action is so important. So those are two things I'm passionate about.
And I think passion is one of those things that like every one of us has to have, and especially in these times. Something that drives you, that gives you a purpose, you know, like to keep going, to know that this is something like generational that's happening right now. We're gonna get through this. We're gonna move on, hopefully moving on to a better way of doing things, or a better society, or a better world. And taking that bit of the things you're passionate about, what are the things you're curious about, like right now?
It's kind of in the same domain. Certainly how to befriend my thoughts, how to befriend these concerns and fears. So I've spent a lot of time there, but my curiosities have also kind of led me to this: how do we elevate social problems like hunger, like poverty, like deforestation? I mean, kind of the big bucket items above things that maybe not as timely or not as immediate or perhaps even unnecessary. And this is a very half-baked conversation. I was just talking to my partner about this the other day. Technology is phenomenal, and there's so much utility, and it's expediting and catalyzing so much creation and innovation. But I think it sometimes gets a little too much time of day or nobility or honor, and people flock and they invest so much money. Again, mind you, it's needed and it's deserving, but I think other problems that are utilizing people, which I think is our greatest resource to address some of these really difficult social problems, they get kind of pushed away, as opposed to creating something that's an attachment or an addendum to an existing technology platform. We throw ourselves to that. And I want to equalize the field. I want people like you, people like myself, to get a fair shot at the game, even if we don't create something that is the next technological pursuit or advancement, because we're still offering benefit and impact. And again, this is such a half-baked thought of mine. I do want to. I will write a blog post on it one day, but not yet.
I think you, like, people like you is it's impressive to know, to see, to get to know a little bit more, because here in this edition, in this new space, where I'm always like curious about like what people are going to say with we keep some questions like the same for everyone, but I'm always curious to know like what are the things that maybe people are thinking the same, like get together. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm trying to look for maybe some, they're not weird answers, because there's not like wrong or right answer, but I'm always like, well, what will Pavel think about this, or
Sure.
And especially this times, one thing he's kind of like curious about besides mental health, because I know that you're very into like what you do, but I always want to know like the day-to-day that this person's have, like what are all those little things that one of my guests, I think was our last guest, or the last guest we had, she said something like very accurate. I think that she said, in this weird time, all of our little like, how do you say it in English? All of our little weirdness and weirdy things that everybody has within us are rising up. And
that's beautiful.
You know, like there's a lot of things that maybe in this time you are like approaching differently, or you doing things differently, or you are like doing new things that maybe you wanted to do, but you weren't able to do it because, I don't know, maybe time, maybe whatever else you think that you couldn't do it. I want to know, like, besides like all your drive and all your passion you have with mental health in general, what are those other like weird things and like backstage travel, you know, like like for example, I mean, things that are maybe I'm curious about right now, and this is very like, I mean, this is not like, oh my God, Neiza, you're going to change the world or anything, but it's something like maybe for me is impressive, and I said it the last session, um, is Asian culture in general. I'm very like into that, and I'm really curious about learning this new culture and this new way of seeing and creating things, and the visual approach and the language approach, and how can we be like, I mean, we're already global, but how can we be more global? I don't know. Those are the kind of things that I've been like curious about right now, that maybe I'm not going to use it, or maybe I'm going to use it. I don't know, but I would like to know what are those other things, like the weirdest things that
So yeah, that's a great example. Let me give you a weird one. This is kind of the first thing that comes to mind now. I don't particularly like sweets. I don't like candies or chocolates or cakes of any sort. I'm a savory type of person. But Neiza, when it comes to when it comes to Nutella, do you know Nutella? I love Nutella. It's
I lose my mind. I lose myself.
I absolutely do, and
Wow.
I don't need to eat anything else, but if I have some Nutella, and specifically a banana, and I'll put some Nutella on the banana, I can destroy it. So to me, I'm particularly curious, kind of in my own eccentric, weird way, to what you're saying. Why has Nutella grabbed my heart?
Like it kind of like eases your soul, like it softens, like it's kind of like a hug inside.
That's well said. I think so too. So my mom has been very diligent whenever we run out, and I don't even tell her whenever we run out of Nutella. She just happens to always have a spare Nutella jar at home, and she will give me one, and I have always had a full stock of Nutella. Even as we speak now in my cupboard, have not had some Nutella today, but I have thought about it more times than I probably should.
And we maybe think that this kind of things are, they don't have any sense in our life, but I do believe that this little rituals and this little things that we have in life are very like necessary for us, especially in these times. I mean, then maybe you don't feel well, and you feel like, oh my God, this day is going to be really hard for me. Those kind of details that you can have, and also being aware of that you can have that, and you are able to get that particular product because I mean, I'm kind of privileged, obviously, and I know that. But I'm so grateful to know that I can just, if I have a craving or something, that I can just ask for it and have it, and then my entire day just changed, you know, like.
Of course.
And talking about things that Nutella with banana, and trying to like have better days and in our lives, and try to focus and have that like polar star in our life, and what we do and what we want to accomplish. I want to know if you have a mantra, or if you have several mantras. I don't know, like.
I think it boils down to a single word, and thinking. Like I said, I've been spending a lot of time reading about meditation and presence, specifically a couple of books by Pema Chodron, Living Beautifully and Things Fall Apart. And struggling with OCD, my thoughts can sometimes carry me adrift. Feelings, emotions, I can get swallowed by that sensation, and I will fuse who I am with the thought. And if a thought comes, then I have to blurt that thought out, or I have to say something about that. And what Pema talks about in her books, particularly when she's meditating, is when you're meditating, the whole myth here is that you stop thinking. And if you're not stopping thinking, you're doing it incorrectly. When a thought does come up, just to label it as thinking. By doing so, you're conscious, you're catching yourself going adrift, and you're bringing yourself back to the present moment. And I think this practice to me is very personal as well, and something I fall back on a lot, again, with the OCD. My brain is imaginative in many positive ways, but equally in some bad ways. And if I can stunt its momentum, its inertia, and tell myself thinking, I can bring myself back to the current place that I'm at.
That's amazing. And I personally have a lot of mantras. Depending on the day, I try to like apply them. One of them that I started the year was "It's better done than perfect." Because for me, it's really hard to apply things because I consider myself as well like a very like thinking person. Like I'm always like looking for solutions in our modern days, and I'm always curious about technology and what's happening in the world and everything. And for me, like, okay, well, you have all of this, there's tons of ideas, but you don't apply them. So, I mean, it doesn't have any sense that if, like, if you don't apply it. So for me, it's better done than perfect it is still a very close mantra for me. And the last one of a new one that I'm trying also to apply, because last year I won a mentorship for a program in women in graphic design.
Incredible.
That helped me a lot. I mean, I didn't know that I was in a hole, like a big hole in my life. I mean, like in self-esteem, like seeing myself as like a professional, that my work is, I mean, the work that I do is really valuable, and that I have a lot of, you know, like it was hard for me to embrace that. And when I heard that somebody else told me all of those things, I was like, I really do those things. I mean, wow. I do a lot. And I was like, oh my God, how I couldn't see that like before. And one of this other mantra that I'm trying to apply is ladies get paid. Because, you know, there's a generational breach between men and women in payments. Women are paid, I don't remember the percentage, but this is a percentage, like a very big percentage compared to men. And that for me is a mantra, is not really about money, is more into like value.
Absolutely.
You're valuable. I mean, so I'm trying to apply that as well, but it's difficult. It's difficult, but it's a process, I think. And it's hard. I mean, dude, I wanted to talk about this. Mental health these days is, I don't know, it's difficult. It's so difficult. I mean, I've always said that, no, I don't have any problems, or I don't have any disorders, or I don't have any, but you deal with things like your own thoughts, that they can be, a lot of them negative, a lot of them positive, but the negative ones, I think, are the ones that you have to be really aware that why they come, those negative thoughts. And I want to know, Pavel, like, how do you know, I mean, You've done a great job with your organization. I'm really like impressed. I admire you so much for doing the work you do. I know that you guys have a model of doing things to for trainings, mental health workers, and also volunteers and other um, and other kind of people that are like trainers. But if you do the program, I mean, if I'm in a Finemind program, and let's say, I mean, let's put the picture that I still need like help, like more like really into more professional help. How how do you get that people to that particular help? And I'm going to step away a little bit, and just for instance, I'm not in this program, but I'm dealing with my issues and my negative thoughts and my problems. How do you know when to reach professional help?
That's kind of the $1 million question. So many people in Uganda either don't know they're experiencing depression, or if they do realize that they have something that's affecting them, or a stressor is blown up, again, they don't have access to those supports. So it's a kind of a double whammy. It's a really, the odds are slated against you. Currently, we have 18 health workers who are working in northern Uganda. 15 of them, I believe, are existing health assistants at the health centers. So they are working there, they are taking blood tests, they are seeing patients regularly. And in addition to their everyday work, we hope that we have given them an extra tool to provide mental health supports to individuals who come. The other 3 are not health assistants. We have an individual who works at the local town council. We have another woman who runs kind of a support group for teenage moms, someone else who does something else in the community. So we're really trying to be intentional in positioning people kind of in all walks of life in the community, as opposed to having someone who's kind of sitting ordained above everyone else, and that person is instructing or ordering and telling you what to do. True community health requires community. And if you're able to really equalize the playing field and have people who are amongst the people, they are speaking with their friends, they are listening, they are asking questions. And from that, our crop of 18, which is not a lot, and we're hopefully going to expand that and have greater impact, they're able to ask those pointed questions, provide that type of help that maybe someone could use. And mind you, we're providing something very basic. It's strategies, it's practices, it's skill sets, it's a different kind of paradigm to thinking. But if someone requires more in-depth supports, if they're highly suicidal, if they have concurrent schizophrenia or psychosis or substance abuse, we are not proud to say that we take them on. That's my dog. We take those individuals and we want to refer them to the specialists who can provide that help for them. And it's very important for us to have that distinction. And at any point, if we start to assume that we are experts at everything and that we can help these individuals, we are actually doing a disservice, a disjustice to our work. We keep in our parameters, we provide supports for depression and anxiety, which is a very ubiquitous thing, right? Stress, emotional well-being. To your point, it's something we all contend with. But if someone requires more in-depth supports, it's our job to have a community network, another agency who can in fact provide that for them.
And have you had people that want to reach to you that they are not necessarily living in Uganda, but maybe they're living in the US and they find Finemind? They came across a Finemind and they reach you and they say, hey, Pavel, I'm interested in entering into your program. How do I do? I mean, do you guys do that, or?
I'd love to get to a place where we could do that. We've for quite a while here, we've had some success in Uganda, but I've had lots of people ask me, why not do this work in the United States? Which is a very fair and logical question.
Right.
And we've tried, Neiza, we have tried to penetrate schools. I've been in touch with multiple school districts, but have hit two obstacles. The idea of teachers providing basic emotional counseling or support. The establishment, current psychiatrists, current psychologists don't feel that teachers are qualified to do that. That's one. I've also heard that administering a questionnaire, a screening questionnaire to understand baseline, that's not something a school can do, because typically once you administer that questionnaire, you have everyone complete that. And I think there's actually quite a bit of apprehension in knowing that there are far more kids, far more students who are struggling with depression and anxiety. And once as a school you have the data, you are obliged to do something about that. So there is this reticence, reluctance to implement that system. We are trying to also work with a police force at the moment, which is exciting to have that support. A similar idea of how can, whether it's police officers or another peer educator, be equipped with some of these tools, this mindset, and when they're coming up against an individual who may be a typical criminal who we think is doing something incorrect, perhaps they need mental health supports. There's a lot of different tentacles where it can get into, but unfortunately in the United States, we have not had much luck with it. I think it's a very territorial place to be, but we're hopeful. You know, one of your questions that you had asked me prior, what would the world look like? And if we were to extrapolate to that, I believe, and I'm hopeful that mental health, or the establishment of mental health, will be much more decentralized, as opposed to having someone who is an expert and we depend on this one individual. How can we recruit other individuals, people, integrate care within other establishments, so we're really providing support to everyone, as opposed to being reliant on one expert and everyone else who doesn't necessarily qualify or deserve this person's attention is just left behind. And that's unacceptable. And I'm hopeful, and I believe that that's where we're going.
And taking that and moving on to the future, I mean, what we want to know about the future, and now with, you know, all this situation that we don't know when it's going to end, and we're still living it. And this is the present. I mean, this is the future also. With all the situation currently happening in the world, which has forced us to lock ourselves in our homes and in our minds. I mean, we spend a lot of time with ourselves and with our minds. I would like to know, what have you learned in isolation these days?
I love to read a little quick story that comes to mind when you ask me that. It's a poem, and I won't read the whole poem, but the title of the poem is actually called Birdfoot's Grandpa. And again, it was in a book by Pema Chodron. And the idea is that it's about a boy and his grandfather, and they're driving on a country road in the midst of a rainstorm.
Am I gonna cry?
I hope not.
I'm scared.
And the grandfather keeps stopping the car and getting out to scoop up handfuls of toads that are all over the road and deposit them and place them safely at the roadside. Now, after the 24th time he's doing this, the boy loses his patience and he tells his grandfather, "You can't save them all. Accept it. Get back in. We've got places to go." And the grandfather, knee deep in wet grass, his hands full of toads, he just smiles at his grandson and says, "They have places to go too." And I read this story, right, and I've thought about it a lot. But I think for us change makers, for individuals who maybe see the world slightly different than others, I think it demands, it warrants us to get out of the car 24 times, 25 times, 26 times. I mean, it requires a relentless commitment and conviction. And even if it feels silly and the workload and the mountain that you're climbing is pretty large, I think it's up to us to continue to be committed. And certainly in this time when there's so much against us, when we can't necessarily be amongst peers and friends, and you know, a lot of issues are surfacing. I think for us who are kind of the few and far between who maybe have these misfit ideas, I think it requires a relentlessness, a persistence, to know that we have to keep picking these toads up and placing them at the side of the road over and over and over again.
I cried a little, to be honest, like a little tear went to my eye. I'm like, oh no, this is just a dust. What a beautiful poem. I mean, this is one of the things that I love the most about this new digital space that we created, that it impresses us a lot in so many different ways. I mean, who would have thought that this answer will lead to a poem? You know, like, those are the kind of things I really value. And it's interesting to know how this minds work. And I love to see all of this different answers to the same question. Isolation has been weird. It's been tough. It's been beautiful in some ways. It's been a lot of things. But I want to know and just try to finish our session here, because we're running out of time, I think. For me, for all the people that may watch this later, that are, I mean, they're in the creative industry or not, or in innovation, or they're doing a lot of other things that enriches our world also. Do you have any tips or strategies to help with our mental health, like right now, or not even like, yes, like right now, but also like looking for the future? I mean, what will be your tips or strategies for now and for tomorrow?
Sure. I'll give 2 quick points, but they kind of lead into one another. I talked about this idea of refraining from doing something, of trying to fill time to distract ourselves. I think one thing that we can all do, or we can all practice, is refraining from looking at our phones when we want to. Especially when a text comes in, we have this immediate desire to know right then and there who wrote us.
100%.
But I also think we have moments, and I've experienced this, where your phone's in your pocket and all of a sudden you think someone has texted you. And you have nothing. And you have nothing. And I think in moments when we continue to do that, to engage in that behavior, I think we habituate ourselves to seek that pleasure, to distract ourselves, to get engrossed in the phone. And I think a practice that may be a little bit difficult, but can really yield some positivity, is to not reach for your phone, is to feel that apprehension, again, on your own course, on your own terms, and sit with that. Do something else. And I think that leads into this idea of we are very capable, or we think we're very capable of multitasking. And maybe this idea of refraining from our phone is to practice monotasking, right? To pick one thing, or whatever thing that you're doing, and to only do that. And to only do that.
Difficult. Oh my God.
It is very difficult, but you can be consumed. If you're eating a meal, eat your meal. Don't take your phone out. Don't speak with someone else. If you're brushing your teeth, do that. Because I think we're blitzing past much of the mundane, and much of our days are comprised of these ordinary moments. And talks like these, definitely make my heart explode, and it's exciting. But the rest of the day, I'm pillaging away on my own computer quietly at the table, And I think those are the moments that I want to reap benefit and excitement from. And I think being able to refrain from distracting myself with the phone and also being very particular about monotasking is something I think we can all do.
Oh my God. I will try to apply those tips and strategies in my day-to-day. No, I mean, I have. It's ironic because, I mean, this times where in quarantine and isolation, you probably think that I'll be like laying in my bed, like reading all these books that I haven't read, or watching all of the. I mean, I'm pretty busy. I mean, I'm busy as hell, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to do all those things at once, and I have to reply to everyone, and I have to, because for me, like, to do everything at once and reply to everyone that writes me, it's kind of like being professional, you know. If I don't do that, then I'm not being professional in a way. So it's really hard for me to just like dig in that and just to know that, okay, like for everything there's a time and space, and certainly you have, I mean, this, what a great moment to be with yourself, to like nourishing yourself and like give a time for you and to grow and to build this other new person that is going to like be in this world for a while. So thank you, Pavel, for your tips and strategies for modern days like this. I mean, yeah, and just to keep talking about the future, and this transition is not going to be so like smooth, because again, we're kind of like running out of time, but
Sure.
I want to know, what do you think the future will be for mental health?
Right. I'll be sensitive to the time as well. So I'll try and be as concise as possible. Certainly, I think the idea of decentralization that I quickly talked about earlier, providing peer support, peer counseling, community mental health. In Uganda, there's one national mental referral hospital for the entire country. That's not okay. I'm glad that they exist, but there needs to be more. So as opposed to having a single national mental hospital or a select crop of specialists, how can we have more individuals who are providing care? I think certainly integrating mental health within primary care, within other advents or participations of whether it's school, whether other niches, having mental health be a part of that ecosystem, I think is also critical. And certainly, maybe I spoke a little bit negatively about technology. I think telehealth is definitely where we're going, and the ubiquity and the impact and the reach, the accessibility of technology is incredible. And I'm excited to also see this idea called functional fixedness. Maybe you've heard of this. You look at a paperclip and you're asked, what can a paperclip do? If you can imagine, and you think, paperclip can hold papers, it can do that, but a little kid can see this paperclip. And what if this paperclip was 100 meters big and it was a monster? What if this paperclip can be melted and created into this? I'm excited to see a similar creative fusion happen within mental health that I think is going to blow all of us away equally.
It's impressive. Before we jump into our last question and the overall picture of everything and of this 2020 vision, remind you all that we're going to do the Q&A via Slido. The code is 56841, and just write your questions to Pavel. So Pavel, yeah, the last one, and to finish it, how do you imagine the world to be at the end of this decade?
Yeah.
How old are you?
How old am I? I just turned 29 a couple of weeks ago.
Oh my God, you guys are so young. I can't believe it. Oh God.
You're similar to our age, I'm sure.
Done like half of your I mean, a lot of things. Like you were like 100 years. Ah, that's impressive.
Boy, I'm glad that you say that. If I'm 100 years, I look pretty good for that. So I'll take it. What do I imagine the world? I'll take it more kind of abstract. I hope, or I imagine the world to be.
Yeah, this. I'm sorry that I interrupt you. This is more kind of like an exercise, like an imagination exercise, a creativity exercise. So for maybe in 2030, when we met again, then we look back to these videos and see if you nailed it or not. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, this exercise.
I imagine the world to be a little bit more benevolent, more kind, more gracious, more generous. I imagine a world where people are far more understanding of differences, as opposed to holding on to their similarities and detaching or separating individuals who may be construed as different. I imagine the world to be much more porous and permeable to new insights and ideas. Of the idea that, you know, a cell has a cell membrane, but that membrane is also permeable. It has to let things out and in. And I think right now a lot of us are rather closed off. And I'm hopeful that in 2030, as a collective, if the world can be kind of defined as the cell, it's much more receptive to new ideas and also much more giving elsewhere. I also hope that we're much more responsible as a society for our actions and our words, and in so doing, we're held accountable by our actions as well. But me personally, I hope by 2030 I'm married. I hope I have children, and I hope I'm also laughing at length, hard, and although I don't have these, I hope that I'm like wearing suspenders or something like that, and just enjoying life.
And with cabinets with loads of Nutella. That, folks, was Pavel Reppo 2020 Visions. Thank you so much, Pavel. But
boom,
we have a bonus track this for the first time in 2020 Visions. I wanted to do this since the first one. I'm not gonna lie, but I was looking for the perfect time to do it, and I said, you know what? I don't have to wait that long. I have to do it. So this bonus track is taken from a TV show that I watched a lot in film and arts that is called Inside the Actor's Studio. And this is a really quick questionnaire of 10 questions, like very like loosen up questions. The concept was originated by a personality, like a French television personality. I think it's Bernard Pivot. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but
that's well said.
And these are the 10 questions that Pavel has to reply them quickly. I mean, the first things that comes to mind. So starting, Pavel, what's your favorite word?
Amazing.
What's your least favorite word?
No.
What turns you on?
Soft blankets.
What turns you off?
Socks.
What sound or noise do you love?
Rain.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Kids crying.
What's your favorite curse word?
We'll keep this one relatively PG. Let's just say shit.
Yes. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
A magician.
What? Whoa! I wasn't expecting that. What profession would you not like to do?
A lawyer.
And the last one, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God said when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I missed you. Come on in.
Applause. Thank you so much. Well, it was your 2020 Vision, Pavel Reppo again. Thank you so much, Pavel, for joining us. in this session. It was amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let's move on to the Slido. Let's see.
Let's do it. Wow.
First one, how do you run a nonprofit remotely and still make a living?
I have not figured that one out. So whoever asked that one, maybe you can help me with that. I have a couple of part-time jobs. So in addition to Finemind being a full-time job, I work elsewhere to have some sort of income coming in. But again, I live with my partner, and she's gracious and generous enough to provide and to have a roof over my head and to believe in the work. You know, at some point I read this really funny meme, and I think Neiza and maybe all of you guys can relate to it. The idea that an entrepreneur will avoid working 40 hours a week to work 80 hours a week. And I think I'm well within that group. So maybe just having the wherewithal to work elsewhere, to not put all your eggs in this particular basket, and to also be rational and reasonable that income does need to come in. And if it's not coming in from the nonprofit, how do I get it elsewhere?
And how do you run it remotely? I mean, what's your day-to-day like with Finemind, being in the United States in a different time zone?
Yeah. I typically, maybe once or twice a week, will have a call with my programs coordinator in Uganda. That'll happen morning time in the United States, since they're 9 hours ahead of me. I spend the rest of the time, whether that's working on grants or particular concepts or letters of intent to solicit more funding. The last few days have actually been committed to website building. But my work right now has been trying to relegate or to give up control, because I think I've been a little bit maybe mistrusting. And whenever I feel that I'm becoming too cagey or micromanaging, that's when I need to actually step back. So my work currently has has been to speak, to ask questions, and to trust that the people who are brought on and the work that's happening on the ground is happening well. And I don't need to intervene or to hold their hands. I need to step back.
And do you have like a workflow like for every day, or do you set up goals for, I don't know, monthly, daily,
Yeah.
like weekly? I mean,
So definitely daily. I love to use a notebook. So an actual hard notebook where I write down kind of my to-do per day. And I love the gratification of crossing things out. So I will engage in that. I don't think my discretion is quite good, because sometimes the things I put down will not be crossed off in a day. They may require a month. And sometimes the things I put down will be crossed off in a minute. I'll also typically use a Google Calendar to chunk out larger portions of the day for tomorrow or the following day, just kind of having a general idea of where I want to go with that day. And then sometimes serendipity and changes in plans actually happen, and I want to be also permeable to that.
awesome. Next one. Have you thought about replicating the model in other countries or maybe worldwide?
The definitive answer here is absolutely. I mean, hands down, absolutely. And Neiza and the incredible team behind Ochodias have actually helped us craft a playbook. And this playbook is kind of this living, breathing document that hopefully houses everything that we've done in Uganda from step 0 to success. And the idea behind this playbook is that it's something that we can give or we can license to other organizations, other teams globally. And we as Finemind can then supplement them with mentorship, with guidance and support. And they themselves can take this kind of knowledge bank, if you will, and with their knowledge of culture, as opposed to us coming in and being this bottleneck, they're the ones who are driving the change forward. And I'm hopeful that at some point, once we really get a steady grasp in Uganda, this gets picked up elsewhere as well.
I think that's kind of like the bigger goal. Like, And that's actually one of my dreams and goals, that I need that Finemind has like an
Oh,
international reach, you know.
thank you.
Uh, but
Thank
yeah,
you.
it takes time, it takes work. There's a lot of things that I mean, we don't talk on this. There's a lot of, each and every country has their own laws and their own ways of doing. So we have to see what the world is going to be like in the near future
Hmm.
about that, so we can be and we can have this kind of initiatives in our hands, whatever you are. Next one. What do you recommend to start a sustainable nonprofit?
uh, couple of things come to mind in having an idea that addresses a problem. Love the quote by Albert Einstein. He says that if I was to have an hour to change the world, I would spend 59 minutes of it addressing the problem and one on the solution. Which essentially breaks down to the idea that we're also gun ho and eager to solve. I have this solution, I have this idea, but to truly understand a problem, to get to the bottom of it, to be within the problem inside and out, and only from that place craft an articulate and promising sustainable solution, I think you're setting yourself up for some success. Certainly having friends and family who might be willing to support you financially at the get-go is critical. Unless you're some special individual who has really remarkable connections with funders and foundations, but inherently from the beginning, your closest tribe of people will be friends and family, and ultimately, if they won't drop a few dollars or support you financially, then how will you be able to solicit funds from someone bigger? So maybe carving out that group of people and having a pretty clear idea of the problem you're addressing.
Perfect. Next one. How do you set up a team with the same drive or vision
Mm.
you have?
I think maybe my answer might be a little bit contradictory here. I don't think you do. And I spoke about this a little bit earlier in the presentation. Holding our team to the same expectations that I have is a misalignment, misallocation of resources, and will only famish and fatigue me and actually make me much more distraught. I think a team and vision is certainly important. I think clarity is far more important than inspiration or vision. If we're able to create processes and systems in place that are clear cut, that articulate what needs to be done well, the fact that I'm living here in Colorado and our team does the work in Uganda, the work continues, but also bringing on people, of course, who have an alignment with the mission, who want to further this work is critical. But bringing on people like myself who harbor the same vision, who have the same drive, is if you keep looking for that, you just won't find it, and you're only going to relegate yourself to pain and disappointment. And if you happen to stumble upon that, I mean, keep those people, treasure them, and ultimately people who shed or bring that enthusiasm. I always value those people much more than someone who maybe has a skill set that they bring. Enthusiasm is far more valuable than any skill set. A skill can be taught, enthusiasm cannot.
I think those are called like soft skills. There's hard skills that are the technical ones that, well, okay, you can, I don't know, turn on your computer. Like, yeah, and do, I don't know, you can know to manage some programs or anything, but the soft skills, I think those are the ones that are much more valuable uh, for everyone that can wants to build a team um, for their project or company or organization. Uh, yeah, I totally agree on that.
Mm.
How do you pitch an idea or program
maybe as a nonprofit?
Exactly. As a nonprofit, and how's the process?
This is a bit of a double-edged sword. I think typically the assumption, and I fell in this trap as well, as a nonprofit, you will have people give you money. You have a line of donors, a line of foundations who are going to be knocking at your door, throwing money at you. That's certainly not the case. Um, I think it's far more important when you're developing a nonprofit to actually also have a sustainable business model. If you can have kind of a social enterprise model where you are dependent and reliant on donations, but you're also accepting money for a particular service that you're providing, your odds of success are exponentially better. So this idea that becoming a nonprofit and believing that people are going to be throwing money at you is a recipe for disaster. Unless you can grit it out, unless you can eat bags of ramen and white bread and live on nothing. Because at some point, you have to gain that traction. And once you have impact, the hope is that these particular funders are able to readily believe in this impact, and they're much more able to give you those funds. So I would say, as a quick summary, much more important to have a sustainable kind of financial engine in addition to accepting funds from donors too.
I have kind of like another question to
Yeah.
that. I'm curious about, do you guys, between other organizations or other nonprofit, do you guys help each other, or is there any like camaraderie between nonprofits, and do you kind of like refer to someone that maybe can be like a good donor, or a good a nice yeah, do you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. I wish there was more, Neiza. I think at the end of the day, there's still a slight competition. And as opposed to leading with cooperation or collaboration,
wow.
there is some competition. And I don't think it's overt. It's not like something I'm going to say I'm competing against you, but it's kind of a if maybe this individual or organization benefits, they might be taking my services or my potential income away. I don't think it's spoken necessarily. So I wish there was so much more cooperation and mutual aid. Although I hope that in my circle of individuals, in my circle of friends, in the nonprofits I know, and I've seen this come back to me as well. I get emails often from people who have stumbled upon opportunities that they actually know that I or our work is a better fit. And as opposed to them taking or committing their time, they will send it to me. And I try and do that as much as I can as well. But I don't think it's a well-oiled machine. And if we were to be brutally honest, I think we would say that we're a little bit maybe too competitive for our own good. And we need to be a little bit more pronounced with our collaboration.
Wow. That's really, oh my God, I didn't expect that.
No?
Wow. I'm gonna think about that tonight a lot. I'm gonna read, like, search it. That would be a really nice conversation to have, like, afterwards, like the backstage, and yeah, I mean, like the nitty gritty of the nonprofits, that everything, like the facade is so like, oh yeah, we're doing this and there's society, and we're providing this kind of services where we're gonna help these people in this community, and then in the back, and when you say, oh, well, but this organization can meet up with this organization, and they're kind of like rivals. And you were like, dude, but you're kind of like, your goal is like society in general, and to like have a world together. And it's weird. I didn't expect that answer.
I think it's an honest answer. Yeah.
Good one. I mean, I really appreciate the honest and the brutal honest answer. Last one, Pavel. How can we build our resilience?
I'll give a kind of a personal answer to this. Although there are studies done upon resilience, there are particular questionnaires that gauge resilience and activities that can bolster that. I think from my experience, what has built my resilience is kind of a cross-cutting approach of trying everything, experimenting, exploring, kind of more of a horizontal approach. And I'll give an example. When I was in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was keen on trying new things. So I joined the ping pong club. I was part of the Spanish club. At some point, I learned how to kayak. I did judo. It was a variety of different things. And the hope of that was to learn what certainly kind of made me tick, and the creativity that I enjoyed. And I think equally, when I found that particular thing that I enjoyed, it's imperative to go vertical, to go deep, to go very deep within that thing, as opposed to island hop elsewhere. Because in only that depth are you ever going to stumble upon obstacles and challenges and pitfalls and all sorts of crazy challenges that you were not prepared for. And in subjecting yourself to those new experiences, I think the moment you come up against a challenge, you're forced to kind of create or to operate or to navigate from that place. And I think in so doing, the residue is resilience. I've also really enjoyed travel. Anytime I've traveled to a far off place by myself, it's inherent that I will get lost. I always get lost. And I actually really enjoy that.
House, like going to the living room to the bedroom.
Absolutely. I think in the moment, sure, it might be unpleasant, but always in hindsight, I love getting lost because it requires you to ask and interact with people in a new culture where you may look silly and foolish, but again, you have to swallow that pride and really grow this resiliency that I think only places of discomfort can provide and yield.
Beautiful, Pavel. Thank you so much again. This was 2020 Visions with Pavel Reppo, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Don't forget to follow Ochodias, follow Finemind, and if you can, donate, please, so we can, they can. I'm speaking in
so we can. Great.
So they can still like grow their program and train, keep training all this people and to have more reach in Uganda and make a more meaningful impact in way they are and what they're doing. Don't forget to follow me, Pequeña Serifa, Cuaderno Negro, who made the portrait of Pavel this time, and Isra.pop, who made this incredible main illustration for our Visions. Again, Pavel, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your thoughts, your journeys with us. Hope to see you again in maybe a different edition. Real appreciate it. Stay safe, people. Take care. Be careful out there, and stay tuned for more other 2020 Visions by Ochodias.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.